The Greeks, for instance, believed that the Earth was at the center of the solar system. For many centuries, this was taught as official doctrine, Ptolemy's geocentric system, according to which the sun, moon, planets, and stars are all revolved around the Earth, was certainly motionless and at the center, as the Bible decreed to be the truth, according to someone who should know, God. Copernicus was the first to propose a heliocentric alternative to the Aristotelian Ptolemaic geocentric system. Copernicus placed the sun in the center of the universe. Copernicus included a disclaimer at the beginning of his book, fearing retaliation from the Church because challenging Church teaching constituted heresy punishable by death. However, a few years later, Galileo declared the Copernican heliocentric system to be the actual truth rather than merely a theoretical possibility. Galileo's trial and tribulations as a result of his defiance of traditional church doctrine are well known, and we won't go into them here. The question concerns us is with your indoctrinated belief regarding the solar system. Ptolemy or Copernicus, who was right? Is it true that the sun revolves around the earth or that the earth revolves around the sun? What are your beliefs and why do you hold them? If you're like most people, you probably believe that the earth revolves around the sun because scientists have proven it to be true. It is possible that it is real and that scientists are aware of it, in the relative sense, of course, but why do you believe it? Over the blackboard in 19th century American schoolhouses, there were ominous signs that said, "Fear God." Religious art, such as cones from heaven, various saints, and the hierarchy angels could be found at almost every school across the country. Pictures of prominent scientists such as Albert Einstein, Thomas Edison, Madame Curie, George Washington Carver, and others, as well as the other charts such as the hierarchy of the elements, have since replaced these religious icons. And what primary school classroom nowadays doesn't contain at least one depiction of the solar system, with the sun at its center and all the planets orbiting it? Most likely you were first introduced to the Copernican-based heliocentric view of the solar system by some such image. How convenient for the teacher in charge of indoctrinating you with this belief. All she had to do was point to the great mural on the wall and say, "There, see?" Of course, this pointing is merely a ritual to avoid having to walk outside and demonstrate how this is known to be true, right? Of course, one could do it in theory, right? One just doesn't have to, right? Well, of course, we don't really doubt the scientific certainty, but if we did, how could we go to see the truth for ourselves? After all, science is built on experience. The empirical technique will show us that the Earth does revolve around the Sun. So, whatever reference point in the solar system you're looking out from, that area will appear to be static, while everything else around you will appear to be moving. But what are the true motions of the planets in the sun, however? Do they even have true motion in some absolute sense? Even if they did, you can't, even in principle, see it just by looking. But isn't that what the church officials claimed? Their argument against Galileo was it was impossible to tell just by seeing. And guess what? The church was right. Facts regarding the fundamental nature of the world, including the solar system and the universe, are not attainable to us without revelation from God, according to the church of the time. It wasn't because he couldn't gaze up at the time, as some scientists nowadays would have you think, and may even themselves wrongly believe to be the case. The issue wasn't that we could go up and look all we wanted back then. The problem is that looking doesn't settle it. There is no position in the universe from which to look. As Einstein demonstrated, there is no absolute vantage point in the cosmos from which we can perceive the real motions of anything. This is why his photograph is displayed at all of the schools. The only thing about motion that is absolute is that it is relative.
Copernicus' system easily explains retrograde motion. If the Earth also is moving around the Sun and it is closer to the Sun than, say, Jupiter, it has got a shorter distance to go and hence will catch up to and then past the position of Jupiter. But Ptolemy's system explains this too. Since Ptolemy around 150 AD developed his system to account for the seen motions in the heavens, it should not be surprising that he accounts perfectly well retrograde motion. He does it with epicycles. Each planet, such as Mars, does not just go around the Earth in a circle, but circles its own orbit around the Earth. The orbit of Mars around the Earth would be represented as something like Figure 1. This figure shows how epicycles work in Ptolemy's geocentric model. Mars, for example, has its own orbit around the Earth. Then how did we ever come to pick the Copernican system, first published in 1543 over Ptolemy's? The next most obvious answer that presents itself is that Copernicus' system must be simpler and should therefore be preferred on grounds of simplicity. But nothing could be further from the truth. The popular belief that Copernicus' heliocentric system constitutes a significant simplification of the Ptolemaic system is obviously wrong. The Copernican models themselves require about twice as many circles as the Ptolemaic models and are far less elegant and adaptable. Small wonder some critics of science, such as philosopher Paul Feyerabend, have remarked, scientific facts are taught at a very early age and in the very same manner in which religious facts were taught only a century ago. There is no attempt to waken the critical abilities of the pupil so that he may be able to see things in perspective. At the universities, the situation is even worse, for indoctrination is here carried out in a much more systematic manner. Criticism is not entirely absent. Society, for example, and its institutions are criticized most severely and often most unfairly, and this already at the elementary school level. But science is excepted from this criticism. In society at large, the judgment of fact view to be the final truth. The scientists of the time claimed, while their theories might not be absolutely perfect and account for everything, they were on the verge. Today, scientists still talk this what, claiming the theories that are the latest fad have them on the verge of understanding everything. But the theories don't get closer and closer. They shift completely, and then the new theory has them on the verge again. Today, we are in the same boat. Whatever is taken to be the truth according to our evidential framework of propositions is heavily biased toward the ever-receding present, and apparently recedes with it. Based on what has happened to past relative truths, we have, it seems, good reason to believe that much of what science now claims to be true will someday be unmasked and revealed as false by future scientific views that will also, at some later future time, themselves be revealed as false. But all along the way, of course, the scientists will keep chanting, like a mantra, "We're on the verge. We're on the verge." If what we believe now about the world was because of the scientific authorities, then we are not convinced enough of those propositions. This makes us indoctrinated or made to believe into something uncritically.